Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Danaher. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the New York State Attorney General's office. My office is in Binghamton, and we are out here at Cornell Cooperative Extension for our monthly consumer issue program. We put on all different topics throughout the course of the year. A couple we double up on, like landlord-tenant issues, which are particularly problematic, and today's topic is consumer credit issues. I think most people would agree that we're becoming more and more a credit-based society. I know I am, because I don't walk around with a lot of cash. I know that my kids are even less so. They have this thing called a debit card, which is cash in their pocket, and that's what they seem to use all the time. I haven't stepped over into that land very much. Maybe it's because of the job that I have with the Attorney General's office, and I've seen so many issues crop up. And for those of you that may not be aware, although a debit card is a piece of plastic that you carry around, similar to what a credit card is, it is in essence cash. It's in essence an access to cash. So in the typical example, where the cash card, the debit card that you carry, is attached to your bank account, that's direct access into your bank account. And me personally, I just prefer that there be a buffer in between, which in essence is a bank, and that is with the use of a credit card. A credit card is a loan. It's, you go to a store, you pull out this plastic, you swipe it, or now you stick it into the machine, and what happens is that the bank that's behind that card actually gives the money to the merchant, and then we get every month our credit card bill. It could be Discover card, it could be through a bank, it could be MasterCard, Visa, those sorts of things, that in essence advance the money to the merchant, but then we have to pay the bill. And what happens if we don't pay the entire bill? When it's due, there is, like any other loan, interest associated with it. And for those that don't make any payment whatsoever toward that, there are other fees associated with not paying at least the minimum payment each month on that. So I prefer to have that loan thing in there, because I'm one of those ones, which I hope most of you out there are, I'm one of those ones that pays the balance off every month when it occurs. So it's in essence just me paying people throughout the month, and at the end of the month I just have to pay my actual cash once. Instead of carrying around cash and then not having cash and having to go get more cash and all that, I just use this, and then at the end of the month I take care of it. But we become more and more of a credit-based society. The amount that's out there in loans is tremendous. I just have statistics back from 2018, although we've just stepped into 2020, so it's really within the last year or so, that credit card debt is upwards of $420 plus billion. Mortgage credit, $9.14 trillion. Student debt, which is ever increasing, back in 2018 was $1.44 trillion. And as of 2018, the average house that credit card debt has gone up about approximately 5% every year. But that has changed over a period of time. Average household debt is almost $7,000. In 2018, the overall total household debt, so you have all those mortgages and auto loans and student loans and credit card loans, the average debt is $135,000, over $135,000 per household. So we are really a credit-based society, and credit's good as long as you use it properly. There are many things now that we purchase that used to be convenience items, which are now necessities. Those items that are now necessities, or some would perceive them to be necessities, are more expensive, and that many people don't have the cash to buy the necessity, and therefore has to obtain credit in order to acquire it. Cars, and cars are ever more increasing in price. Computers, some would say televisions, although televisions are really inexpensive now, relatively speaking. I mean, I was walking through the store the other day and I saw one that was, had all the bells and whistles and real everything, and it was, I don't know, $1,800 or something. But, I was also passing by, I mentioned it to my wife, I was in Walmart last week. We were doing our grocery shopping or something, and I had to go back in the electronics area to get something. See, that's how we shop. She sends me off on errands while she focuses and goes aisle to aisle. But if there's a separate thing and somebody needs to go off to another corner of the store, that's my job. So I was going out, and as I was going back in the corner where I was, I walked through the consumer section. I actually saw a television. I think it was 32 inches, which by today's standards is a small television, but it's a pretty good sized television, that was under $100. It's amazing, but there are some out there that are very expensive, and people may not be able to have the money to pay for that item outright, so the only way to acquire it is to go through credit. The other thing is that sometimes we've melded what we talk about here at Cornell Cooperative Extension between needs and wants. Sometimes that gets to be a gray area, and people, the wants seem to morph over into the need area, and that they don't have the money, but they want that item, or in their mind need that item. And the only way they're going to be able to get it is to have someone give them credit in order to purchase it. Another reason why is that for safety purposes, a lot of people don't want to be carrying around cash anymore. They don't think it's safe to have a large wad of cash with them. And by having other access, credit cards, that they may be able to use that instead, and provides a little bit more safety. Also, we do need credit in some instances where emergencies occur, auto repairs, medical bills, travel to go see a sick relative, get home for some reason and they don't have the money, so that they need credit in order to go ahead and do all of that. Credit scams are particularly difficult. In a lot of instances, in scams that are related to credit, we don't really know it's a scam until after everyone is long gone, and you can never find them. So that's particularly problematic. We may not find out that it was a scam until many weeks later. We may not find out about it until we actually need credit and find out, uh-oh, I can't get that loan because my credit is all messed up. That might have been the result of a scam. And in some instances, it can be very time-consuming to correct those problems. And if you need the credit now, you need it now. You don't need it maybe 2 months from now when you can get the problem with the credit resolved. So it's really important, especially in this day and age, that people mind their credit, that they stay on top of things. They know what's going on out there. Also, they need to know how credit works, because you don't want to get yourself into a problem. Problems can really occur even in the non-scam realm, or just the legitimate credit situations. Many consumers have gotten themselves into trouble through improper use of their credit. They end up getting behind, and it's kind of a snowball rolling down the hill, or a rock rolling down the hill, that once you get caught up in the credit trap and you can't get out of it, you have to get more credit to do something, and then you need more credit to do that, and then you can't afford it. And there are some people that think, oh, I'll buy this $2,000 thing now, I'll use my credit because all I have to pay is $50 a month. But they don't realize how expensive that $50 a month is to them. So we'll talk about those issues as we go along. One of the big scams in the area of credit is identity theft. It's by far the largest area of fraud surrounding the use of credit. Oftentimes we take our credit for granted because it's always there. I mean, you always need it. I just go out. I know I am very meticulous about my credit, and I might go out and buy something, and it might be a large item, and frankly that I could probably afford and pay for it. But they have this great offer that you have 6 months interest free. And I'm all about finance. I say, if I can use somebody else's money for 6 months, I know there's a benefit to me doing that. But I'm really meticulous about it, and I make sure that in that 6-month period that I take care of it. And it's my use of my money for 6 more months. But we sometimes will take it for granted. We get credit card applications all the time. We get emails all the time about this credit and that credit. We don't think twice about it until we need it. We may need to get a car loan because our car broke down. And if our credit's messed up and we don't have the cash, we could get ourselves in trouble. Car repairs, new home purchases, student loans, all those sorts of areas where people get credit. Also, we're using credit, I think, more frequently because we are becoming involved in less face-to-face transactions. Less time that we go into the store and pull out cash and hand it to the young high school checkout person who we saw when they were a little kid and now they're working at the local grocery store. And we know them and we go there and we hand them cash and we buy our things. Less and less is happening with that. And as a result, we're using credit to purchase these items in less face-to-face manner. We're buying things online. I was just listening to a report on the radio as I was coming here about how, this isn't earth-shaking news to anyone out there, is that personal retail purchases have gone down dramatically. There was the report that I just heard about how Penny's, J.C. Penney's, some of you may remember that store. J.C. Penney's, I think their revenue from the holiday season was down like 7%, which is a pretty large percentage. And some were saying, well, that was good. You know, well, how was that good? 7%. Well, we expected it to be a lot worse, but it's because people are buying a lot of things online. They're using the Amazons and other places that deliver to the door, and retail establishments are being hit. But how are they doing that? A lot of times they're doing it through the use of credit. They're using their credit card. I make purchases on Amazon, and we have our credit card attached to the account. If we want to buy things, we just use the credit card, and the month comes in, and we pay it. So we're having less face-to-face contact, which in the fraud realm is great for scam artists, because if they can't see you and you can't identify them, you don't know where they are, it makes it a lot easier for them to perpetrate it and to ultimately get away with it. So we're doing more purchases over the internet, more purchases by calling the 800 number that we see on a television commercial, and less face-to-face. People are not using their bank's walking into the banks as much. There's not as many tellers as there used to be back in the day. It's more of a, I'm just as guilty of this as anyone else. Is I go to the bank when it's convenient for me, and if it's at 7 o'clock at night and that's convenient for me, I go to a machine, I stick my card in the machine, I punch in a few numbers, and the machine spits money at me, and I have actual cash. I don't have to make sure I get there between the hours of 9 and 4 or whatever the bank hours are to actually see somebody face to face. And so if I go to make a withdrawal or something, and you have in the olden days, when you had to go to the bank to get cash and somebody is making a large withdrawal from the account, and they're dealing with tellers who know them, have been friends with them, they've been dealing with them for years, who can say to them, oh, so you're withdrawing $5,000. I hope you're going on a great vacation or something. And when the person responds, no, I got this telephone call from someone that say I owe the IRS all this money, it's much easier to stop that, or at least to give warnings about, hey, I just wanted you to know that there's these scams out there where people are receiving contacts, telephone, email, those sorts of things from someone claiming they're from the IRS. And they're stealing people's money. I'd really be careful about that sort of thing to help put a stop to it. With less face-to-face contact, people are just going through and making the transactions without any stop gaps or any face-to-face contact, and that has led to more people falling victim to scams. And with the idea that this is called identity theft, is stealing people's identity. They're stealing their credit cards, they're stealing our personal identity, social security numbers, any other personal identification information, and going out and getting loans in our name, withdrawing money from bank accounts, doing all kinds of things that this less face-to-face contact has been one of the accelerators, I would say, when it comes to perpetrating fraud. So we need to make sure that even in the realm of credit, that we be very, very good with the way that we handle it. And one way is never give out personal information to someone who contacts us. Be very careful about who we give out personal information to, even though it is more convenient for us. Personal information being credit card numbers, bank account numbers, social security numbers, dates of birth, mother's maiden name, addresses, employment information, all of those things. Do not give out to someone that you don't know. And I suggest to you, you not give it out to anyone who contacts you unless you know personally that it was that person. So if you get an email from someone who says that they're your sister, and they send you an email and they ask, can I get your credit card number because we're purchasing something for the family or for our parents. Don't give out that information unless you get on the phone and you call your sister and say, did you send me an email asking me for my credit card number? First of all, I don't do it over the internet. Here, I'll give it to you over the phone. And you called your sister didn't call you. Your kids didn't call you. You call the person and make sure that you're calling the number that you know of before you give out any personal information. Scam artists like to use this information to take out loans or get credit cards in your name. You may never know about it until later. Bills may be sent to a different address, not you. And before you know it, your credit would be ruined. So how do we go about protecting ourselves? Keep your private information private. Don't give it out unless you know who specifically you are giving it to. Keep credit card and social security information to yourself. Another very good way to protect yourselves, especially in the realm of credit, is we are all entitled to a free copy of our credit report each year. We're actually entitled to 3 free credit reports each year because we're entitled to 1 free credit report each year from each of the major credit reporting agencies: Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Those 3 entities will give you a free copy of your credit report every year. I suggest that you actually take advantage of that. You can do it online at annualcreditreport.com, not freecreditreport.com or anything close to that. It's annualcreditreport.com. When you go on that site, it's a site that's administered by the 3 major credit reporting agencies. You'll be asked specific personal questions that only you would know the answers to. I suggest that you do not reply to an email that purportedly comes from annualcreditreport.com or something similar to that, asking you for if you want a free copy of your credit report, and just fill in this information. I believe that you should go there yourself, annualcreditreport.com. It'll ask you personal information that you should only know. There are multiple choice questions, and I'll give you just similar to, you recently purchased an automobile, and the credit reporting agency would know that because you got an auto loan or something, so that would be on your credit. What is the make and model of your vehicle? And it'll give you options, and yours will be in there. Lots of times the question will also be none of the above, will be one of the answers, and that may actually be the correct answer. But you fill that out. And then there's a number of questions that you have to fill out so that annualcreditreport.com knows that you are you. Then it will ask you if you want a copy of all 3 credit reports or if you want a copy of 1. You could ask for all 3, or you could ask for 1. I suggest ask for 1. Wait 4 months, go back on the website and ask for the second one. Wait 4 months, go back on the site and ask for the third one, and then wait 4 months and go back on, and you started your year over again already. So you can get a free one actually every 4 months. What will end up happening is if you ask for 1, it will kick you out of the annualcreditreport.com. Not kick you out, but you'll be moved to the, let's say you ask for the Experian credit report. It'll put you to Experian. You'll have to answer some more similar personal questions, and then you will get a copy of your credit report. You can get a copy of it. You can download it. You can have it right there. I suggest that you copy it, or that you save it so that you can look at it and look at it. Make sure you go through it. Make sure that everything is on there is yours, because that could be what tips you off that there might be a potential problem. You may see a loan on there that you knew nothing about. You may see a credit card that was opened up in your name under your Social Security number that you don't know anything about. That way you can hit it and get it taken care of before it turns into a real big problem. So that's one way to do that, is to get a copy of your credit report. If you've been denied credit for some reason, that triggers your ability to get a free copy of your credit report as well. Review it, make sure that it is accurate. If it is not accurate, make sure that you contact the creditor that's listed on your credit report. As you contact them and say, I'm not aware of this credit card or anything, and shut it down. Make sure that people don't realize that when you cut up your credit card, that doesn't close the account out. So you need to get a hold of the creditor, have the account canceled, and then you cut up the credit card. The most non-fraud issues, so there are even problems with credit that we talked about earlier that may not be fraud related, but it can be a problem because consumers don't realize the costs associated with having credit. We often just focus on getting the money or getting the credit, because that's what it is. But we really need to be a good consumer. We need to understand what goes on in this whole transaction. And when we understand it, we're much better able to handle it properly. So we have to understand, what is credit? Credit is a loan. It's someone that is advancing you a loan. Now, it may be that you purchased a car and you say, well, I'm getting the car, but you have to pay for it. And the only way that you're getting to pay for it, car is easy because you have to sign loan documents when you buy the car. But with a credit card, all you're doing is you're going into a store, you're buying something, you whip out the plastic, and you put it in the machine, and then you can walk away with the stuff. Well, what really happened was somebody gave you a loan. That's what credit is. They gave you a loan to purchase that merchandise. And you have to pay the piper at the end. So there are several aspects that go into credit. And that is, most obviously, the cost of the item that you just bought. If you bought a car, it's the $30,000 that you're paying for the car. If you're buying groceries, it's the $122.33 that you walk out of the grocery store with that was paid for by somebody else, the bank. And you have to pay them back. So the one aspect of it is the amount that you are borrowing, the amount that you purchased. So that's one aspect of credit. The other aspect of credit is, how do I pay it back? There are multiple factors that go into this stew, credit stew. That is, how much have you borrowed? How much did you pay for that item? How much did that item cost? 2, what's the interest rate that you have to pay someone back for the use of that money? That's the price that we have to pay for credit, is interest, or any other fees associated with it, but we'll talk with interest. Interest is the cost to us for borrowing money. It's really easy in the car purchase. We bought a car, going to pay it over 6 years. We've got to pay the money back to the bank. How's the bank make money on this deal? Interest. So the interest rate is a crucial factor that I will tell you many people do not take into account. The interest rate. How long a period of time do I have to pay this loan back? Again, easy with a car or a house that it's a car, it's a 6-year loan, or a house, it might be 15 or 30-year mortgage loan that we have to pay it off. And that's called closed-end financing. There's a closed end to it. It's a set date. A little bit different with credit cards, because credit cards are open-ended credit, which is you get the bill, you pay, some people may pay some of it, so there's a balance, but then you go out and buy more things, and then it adds on to it, and it just kind of, it floats, a revolving line of, it revolves, and you pay it off and everything else. But one factor is, with a credit card, how long do you have to pay it? And it's all a function of what the minimum payment is. Because if the minimum payment's low enough, the longer you have to be paying that minimum amount. If you pay half of it 1 month and half of it the next month, well, then you get it closed out in 2 months. But it could just keep going on, and that's where consumers get in trouble, is they think, okay, it's only going to be $50 a month. But they don't realize that that $50 a month they have to pay for a really, really, really long time. And when you take into account how much you borrowed, how much you bought something for, let's say $2,000, but I'm only going to pay $50 a month. You may actually pay back, again, it depends on the interest rate, you may have to pay back $3,000 just to have borrowed that $2,000, because the interest rate was high and it was spread out over a long time. Because the longer you borrow money, the longer you have to pay interest on it. That's why those with good credit pay it off as fast as they can. And we all know that interest rates on credit cards can be really, really high. So paying that, if it's a really high interest rate and your monthly payment is small, that tells me one thing, and it should tell all of you one thing, and that is you're going to be paying that for a really long time because you're not going to eat into the principal amount of the debt for a long time, because most of your initial payment is just paying back the interest. And unless you eat into the principal of the loan and that still remains out there, you're going to be paying interest on it and interest on it and interest on it. And when you add up all of what you have paid over the whole life, it can be astronomical, especially with a credit card with very high interest rates. So the thing that you need to focus on is the amount you're borrowing, the interest rate you're being charged, and the length of time that you are going to have this loan. I am seeing now with car loans that they're getting stretched out longer and longer. Why? Because we as consumers are saying, you know, if I stretch this car loan out 8 years as compared to paying it in 5 years, my monthly payment goes down by $50 or whatever it is. That's much better for me, and I can handle that payment if it's $50 less if I spread it over 8 years. If I pay $50 more, yeah, I'll pay it off in 5 years. But, you know, my monthly budget works so much better with this. You don't realize how much that extra 3 years is costing you in actual dollars. So the best advice that any credit counselor could tell people is, if you have to pay cash, if you can't pay cash, make sure you get the lowest interest rate possible. And regardless of the fact that you have a really low interest rate, pay it off as fast as you can. So keep adding payments. One rule of thumb from people would say is, for those of you that have credit, let's say it's a car loan or something, let's say it's a mortgage, make one extra monthly payment every year. So make a 13th payment every year, with that 13th payment going directly to principal, because it reduces the amount that you do. You will pay it off much sooner if you do those sorts of things. I know many people, and this is one of the things that I've stressed with my kids along the way, is you can't, and I've seen this really in the area of car purchases, I've seen this with consumer complaints that have come into our office, is you can't focus on the monthly payment. I know that some people selling vehicles want to get you because they say, but look we can get your monthly payment down to this. Don't focus on the monthly payment, because if that monthly payment is strung over a long period of time, in actual dollars, you are paying out thousands of dollars more than what you could otherwise do if you could just focus more on how much is this car. I tell people, when you're buying a car, focus on the bottom line price. Not the monthly payment. You can worry about that later. Focus on the bottom line price. Do your due diligence. And we do have a whole segment here. I won't spend a lot of time on it. We do a whole segment here throughout the year on auto purchases and auto repairs and problems with that. But let's use the car example. Focus on the car and the car price. Do your due diligence. Look up what the value of cars are. Look up what it is. Look up what you can afford in total dollars. Look up to see what interest rate you might be able to qualify for. You can call down to your local bank, the bank that you may do your banking at, and say, look, I'm going out to get a car. What are your car rate loans right now? And compare with those with the rates that you might have available to you through the dealership. And then you can actually go online. online being a great thing that online is. You can go online and look up, put in whatever you do your search is under, Bing or Google or whatever you do your search. Just put in amortization schedule. And you will get, based on your search, you'll have come up, you can click on it, and you can actually plug in how much you're planning on borrowing, what your expected interest rate is, and you can hit a button and then the length of time that you're expecting to borrow for. And it can tell you how much you can expect your monthly payment to be. Because it's all math. It's just math. And I'm going to go through the particulars of an amortization schedule and how it works. But in essence, an amortization schedule works so that it keeps your payments level every month. You just pay the same amount every month. It's just that in that payment each month, a certain portion is allocated to the interest that you owe, and a certain portion is allocated to the principal that you owe. But your payment stays the same. The thing is that out of your payment, the interest and the principal flip over the course of the loan. And so you can go up and look. So when you go in to buy a car or buy any other item and you think that you have to buy it on credit, be a good consumer. Investigate and say, okay, if I buy this thing for $2,000 and I have to finance it, and I'm thinking, I'll probably get a certain interest rate and I probably can pay this thing off in 2 years. Plug that in. And it will tell you how much you have to pay each year to resolve it. To be paid at the end of the time. So that when you go into the deal, you're not going to be blinded by the fact that, when I looked it up, my payment was going to be $326.45. The dealer's telling me I can get away with $275 a month. Well, it's just math. How did they get $275 and you got $300 and some? And that could be because they took your $300 and some and they stretched it over an extra couple of years. And if they did that, yes, you got your payment down, but in the end, you ended up paying $3,000 more than what you would have otherwise had to pay. If you can live with that, that's okay, but know it going in. Look it up, and then you can make your business decision. If you don't understand anything related to the offer of credit, ask. Because it's too late after you've signed on. Ask all your questions before you sign on the dotted line. With credit cards, find out what is the interest rate, what's the minimum payment going to be, and how will that minimum payment affect my overall balance. I know when I go out and get these, like I'll buy furniture sometimes, and I'll buy it on one of these deals, 6 months free financing. But what you don't realize is, people need to understand this. In those types of deals, what usually happens is the interest is, in essence, deferred. Meaning, you have to make at least the minimum payment, and you better pay it off on the 6 month, on or before the 6 month anniversary, or what ends up happening is, all that interest you deferred, it gets lumped into that, and all of a sudden you've got to pay the whole thing off at, usually these are really high interest rates, and you have to pay all the interest off if you don't pay on time or you don't make the minimum balance. The other thing that you have to be aware of is, again, when you're getting credit, it's the total amount you're borrowing. You have to pay that off within 6 months. That may not mean that if you pay the minimum payment that they tell you over the 6 months, that it's going to be paid off entirely. And you run into that same problem. If you pay the minimum payment, and the minimum payment doesn't cover everything in 6 months, all that interest gets heaped onto it. What I do in that situation is I say, okay, I'm buying furniture. And let's say it's $2,500. And I get $2,500, 6 months interest only. I don't rely on the minimum payment that they tell me I should make, because I figured it out that if I multiply that by 6, it doesn't add up to the $2,500 that I borrowed. I take the $2,500, I divide it by 6, and I make sure that, although it's more than the minimum payment, I make sure that I pay that off every month so that when the 6 month anniversary hits, the balance is 0. That's the thing that we have to be aware of as being a good consumer, because it's shocking if whatever our monthly minimum payment is, it's $125 is the minimum payment. And that obviously in 6 months does not add up to $2,600. And we get to the end of the 6 months, and all of a sudden we get the next bill, and it has credit for the $125 a month we paid for 6 months. But then the remaining balance plus all the interest that's heaped on top of it at 19.99%. And we go, and I thought I was paying this thing off. Be a good consumer. Be ahead of it. Do your own calculations. Figure it out and take care of it. Another important thing. Interest rates on credit cards are really high. Really, really high. And you don't want to be caught up in that thing that we talked about before where, okay, I don't have the full amount to pay this month. I'll pay the minimum payment, and then I'll do, and all of a sudden it starts hitting interest rate, added on, and we're not even attacking the debt that's owed, and it spirals to such a case that people just throw up their hands and say, I can't afford this anymore, and just their credit is ruined. You have to be a good consumer, wise consumer when using credit. Increase your minimum interest payments. The minimum, not the minimum interest payment, but the minimum payments, so that you get this debt taken care of as quickly as possible. There's no free lunch here. It costs money. Credit card companies make a ton of money on the interest that people pay on these things. Let's talk about other issues related to credit. There is a federal law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's very detailed. It's very complicated. It's enacted for the purpose of safeguarding our information and keeping it private. People don't have access to our credit reports just because they know you. They can't, hey, you know, that's Sue Smith down the street. I'd like to find out what kind of credit she has. You can't just go on to a credit reporting agency and start looking other people's credit up. So it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act requires, it's enacted to safeguard, to keep our information private. And we should keep it private. Our credit can only be given out for certain designated purposes. One is by written permission of the person whose credit is being looked up. It can be looked up by those who are in the process of collecting an outstanding debt. It can be looked up for employment purposes. An employer can do a credit check. And you say, well, what does an employer have to do with finding out what kind of credit I have? Well, what if the job that you are applying for involves you handling a lot of money? Let's say you're going to be a bank teller. I can probably be a good likelihood that there's going to be some type of background investigation done if you were seeking a job as a bank teller, because you're going to have access to people's bank accounts, you're going to have access to cash, and the bank does not want you stealing money or anything. So they're going to check and see what kind of credit you have, and do you owe everybody a lot of money that might put you in a vulnerable situation. So for employment purposes, credit can be checked. Pre-approved credit offers can be issued. Now, pre-approved credit offers are a little bit different. I know that we all get those. It's in the mail all the time. Hey, you've been pre-qualified for a low-interest Visa card. Well, what ends up happening is the credit provider, the credit offerer, will send to a credit reporting agency, okay, we want to send out a solicitation to people who fall within this category. And it'll be certain categories of income, because all kinds of stuff's on your credit report. Your income would be on there, and how good of credit that you've been. Are you employed? How long you've been employed? How long have you lived in the place that you lived in? And so they say, people meeting these general criteria, credit scores of a certain amount or anything, we want to send them this offer. And so they'll be afforded the opportunity to solicit you, but they won't know that it's John Smith, that the exact particulars of John Smith's credit. They won't. They'll just know that somebody falls within these parameters. That's why I encourage all of you out there to look. The next time you get one of these things, pre-approved offer, you will see maybe in small print, an asterisk or something. It says, it'll have some type of disclaimer that says, subject to further verification. Yeah, you fell within those parameters, but they want to check more specifically, and they're going to want to get your authority to do a credit check on you in particular, not as part of this general pool that received this credit offer before they offer it. And if you meet all the criteria and stuff, they'll offer you that credit. But it's only someone that has a legitimate reason for getting that credit. I can't, just because I'm in the Attorney General's office, I can't be looking up people's credit or anything. I have no authority. The Fair Credit Report Act does not allow that sort of thing. It must be legitimate purposes, and it's usually on the permission of the soon-to-be borrower. If you have an adverse determination on getting credit, you have the right to get a copy of your credit report within 60 days. And you get notice of that adverse determination. It's 60 days within the time that you get the adverse determination. You have the right to challenge inaccurate information that may be on your credit report. You want to notify the credit reporting agencies. Likewise, if you've been a victim of fraud, you can notify a credit reporting agency, and they're required to notify the other credit reporting agencies that you have been a victim of fraud. You also want to notify the creditor. For example, if on your credit report there's a debt there that was not yours, I would suggest that you contact the creditor, because on your credit report it will show contact information for the creditor. I would contact them to get more information about it. If you challenge a credit notation on your credit report, or if you challenge your, let's say, a credit card, they have a charge on your credit card, they have 60 days to reinvestigate, and the credit reporting agencies must remove that credit notation in your credit report if they're unable to verify it within 60 days. Then we have kind of the other spectrum. What happens if we do fall into that trap of credit problems and we can't pay a debt that's out there? There's another federal law, there's state laws associated with it as too, which is called the Fair Debt Collection Act. And it's, suppose you have some problem paying someone back. One is you do have the obligation to pay. If you borrowed money, you have to pay it back. It's just that. But I know there's some instances where people get into trouble and they're unable to do it. You have the right not to be subject to abuse or harassment in the debt collection process. The Fair Debt Collection Act has certain requirements. One is that you can only be contacted between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. You cannot be contacted at 3 o'clock in the morning with repeated telephone calls saying that you owe money. That is a violation of law. They can't contact you at work if they know that it bothers your employer that you're being contacted at work. You would notify them if they attempted to contact you at work that I am not allowed to have these calls at work. Please stop calling me at work. They can only contact neighbors to locate you. They can't contact neighbors to harass you. They can't contact neighbors and tell them, you know, your next door neighbor is a dirtbag debtor who won't pay his or her debts back. They can't do that. They can't say he owes money. I've had calls like that in the past. Do you know so-and-so? Why? Well, this is John Smith from Credit Services, and we're just trying to locate them, because they can't say to me, he owes us $2,000. That's a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act. The only way that they can contact others is to try to locate a debtor. If they know where the debtor is, they can't be contacting friends, family, neighbors at all. If they know you, they know where you are, they can't be contacting others, because the only reason why they could contact others is to locate you. If they know where you are already, there's no need, and by law they cannot contact others. And they can't tell you why they're contacting you. But I've gotten those calls before, and it's so-and-so from something services. Do you know such and such? I'll know exactly what it is because I've been involved in business. I know. And so if I asked them, well, what's this about? Well, we're just trying to locate them, is all they can really say. They can't say, well, they owe money, or they can say, we're trying to reach them. Do you know how to contact them? That's all they can say. They're not allowed to say it. So if you get a call like that, that's what's happening. It's it's a debt collector. They must stop contacting you if you notify them in writing that you do not want to be contacted. And people who assist consumers with debt and management of debt, that's one thing that they will frequently tell the debtor that they're helping. Notify the collector in writing, put it in writing, I do not wish to be contacted by telephone. And they have to stop. They're prohibited from threatening or violence. I'm going to come kick your butt if you don't pay this bill. That's a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act. You can't do that. You can't you can't make any threats that you don't intend to keep. And if they threaten you, you have an outstanding debt. This is kind of absurd, but I'll use it anyway. You owe them $20. It's usually not going to get a debt collector involved on $20. But let's say they call you and you owe $20. And they say, we're going to sue you. They're not suing you for $20. They're just not going to do it. That's really a threat that they cannot make threats that they do not intend to keep. They can't imply that they're attorneys or government representatives, the police. They can't say that they're police. They can't send you documents that look like legal forms when they are not. They can't threaten you with arrest. If there is any violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act, you can contact our office, the New York Attorney General's office, or you can contact the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, to let them know that there are violations of the Fair Debt Collection Act. Another thing that I like to point out to people, and I see this probably all too frequently, and that is there are businesses out there who assist with debt settlement. They're called debt settlement companies. There has been, and I'm not painting a broad brush here. I'm not saying that all debt settlement companies are bad or anything. I just don't, I'm not willing to be able to say that. However, there has been a history of debt settlement companies out there that have misled consumers in what they do and how they do it and how much they cost. I would suggest that there are many reputable, local credit assistance companies out there, not-for-profit companies that will help people. I know that Cornell Cooperative Extension has programs that can assist people on issues related to credit. They can't clear up your credit for you, but they can give you guidance, unbiased guidance on how to handle these types of situations. But there are other not-for-profits out there that do assist these people, that assist people that have problems. They can't make everything just go away. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. It just can't wipe it away. It's not possible to wipe it away. And sometimes there are out there some debt settlement companies that say to you, a lot of times on television ads, that say, oh, do you owe more than $10,000 in credit card debt? Come to us. We can take care of it. And there are legitimate companies, there are illegitimate companies for that. Some things that you need to be aware of with that. Before you sign on and before you agree to pay anything, make sure you have all of the terms and conditions in writing. Because what has happened in the past is that many of these companies don't do this for free. They get paid. And what the problem was in the past, and there's been laws since then that has helped to remedy that, is They say, okay, here's what we can do. We'll put you on a budget, $450 a month. Yeah, I can swing $450 a month. And you have 5 credit cards that total $20,000. And you can't possibly cover everything, and interest is accumulating and all that on these credit cards, and it's just ballooning up. And you can't cover it all with $428 a month. See, you pay us $428 a month, and we'll go to your creditors and we will negotiate and get those debts reduced so that they can all be taken care of. Great! That's fabulous. I'll get it taken care of. I'll do. What had happened in the past was they charge a fee, and the fee works out to be 6 times $428. So what they did was they took your first 6 months of payments and applied it to their fees. Nothing was going to pay the creditors. The creditors are tearing their hair out and yelling and screaming and everything. And then they say is, after we're paid, we will take your monthly payments and put them in a pool. And then we will contact your creditors and take care of paying them off. Here's what happens. What they do is they contact the creditor and they say, okay, the consumer, our customer, owes you $3,000. We have in a pool $1,500. We will give you the $1,500 in full satisfaction of the outstanding debt. You're better off getting $1,500 now or possibly not getting anything in the future. Sometimes creditors will say, okay, I'll take the $1,500. And that debt is gone. And then they move on to the next one. Well, how long does it take them to accumulate? First of all, getting their fees paid up in 6 months. And then accumulating a pool of $1,500 in order to approach a creditor to say, I'll pay you this much money. Takes some time. And that's only one of the creditors. Then they got the next creditor, next creditor. Well, in the meantime, the consumer's credit is shot because they're instructed by the debt settlement company, stop paying people. We'll take care of it for you. Well, the creditors don't have to wait for your debt settlement company to pay them. So laws came into effect that said that if you use a debt settlement company, they cannot be paid until after the debts are satisfied. So that initial money that is coming in should go directly to settling outstanding debts. If they're taking the money up front, it's a violation of law. Second of all, some people, consumers, are led to believe that all their problems have gone away. All my credit problems have gone away. All I have to do is hire this company, a small monthly payment, and it'll all be taken care of. Your creditors are not bound by your agreement with the debt settlement company. They are bound by the agreement they had with you, which is your credit card agreement, which you'll pay every month. You'll pay at least the minimum monthly payment. If you stop paying them, they'll start calling you and say, wait, I got my debt settlement company working. I don't care about your debt settlement company. You owe us the money. That triggers what we talked about earlier, their Fair Credit or the Debt Settlement Act, where the debt settlement company undoubtedly will tell you, well, just send them a letter. Remember what we talked about? If you send them a letter, don't stop contacting me by telephone, that they have to stop. That's what they'll tell you to do. That doesn't mean that you don't owe the money. That doesn't mean that interest isn't accumulating. That doesn't mean that the debt is getting huge. It just means that they have to stop contacting you. But they can still contact you in writing. And the most significant written documents that they can contact you with is a summons and complaint, because they can sue you on the outstanding debt. You can't walk into court and say, whoa, that's okay, Judge, you shouldn't. Their judgment should be entered against me because I hired a debt settlement company to cover this for me. That the creditor, it isn't a street that everything goes to the debt settlement company and then goes to the creditor and then the creditor back to the debt settlement company and to you, there's still a triangle. The triangle is the creditor to you. That line is not broken when you hire a debt settlement company. They can still sue you. Even if you send them a letter, stop contacting me, that doesn't mean they can't sue you. They could still sue you, and your credit could be ruined. So my advice to you is, before you find something on the internet, or before you answer an 800 number that you saw on television to settle debt, I encourage you to find a local, unbiased, not-for-profit group that can assist you to walk you through this process. And maybe they can give you the confidence to you being your own debt settlement company, to where they can give you guidance to say, you know, if you can, maybe you can borrow it from a family member or something, a pool of money. You may owe $5,000 on a credit card debt, but through other resources that you might have, you might be able to put together $2,500. You may be able to get on the phone and say, look at creditor, I don't have $5,000. I can't pay this thing off. I've been sick, I haven't been working. What I will do is I can pay you a lump sum of $2,500 in full satisfaction of the outstanding debt. Now, most importantly, if they're willing to accept this, make sure you get it in writing. Get it in writing that it is full and final satisfaction of the outstanding debt. And if you're able to do that, you saved yourself the whole debt settlement deal and everything. But get some guidance. That may not be the way to go. The way to go is to talk to somebody who knows about these issues and let them help you walk through it. These debt settlement companies can be very expensive and may not give you the result that you are hoping to get. Credit is a very important and valuable thing. We want to keep it pristine. We want it to be there when we need it. We don't want to abuse it. We have to be a good consumer with the use of credit. If anyone has a problem with a debt collector, debt settlement company, or issues related to credit, they can feel free to contact our office, the New York State Attorney General's office. We'd be glad to give them guidance. We can't give legal advice to anyone that contacts us, but we can give guidance as to what they might do. If someone thinks that they're being abused by a collection agency or something like that, they can file a written complaint with our office. We initially attempt to mediate those complaints by sending the written complaint to the business and ask them for the response. Hopefully that will resolve the problem. Or the other purpose would be it at least lets us know, even if we couldn't help them for their individual legal problem because we can't represent individuals, we can, in addition to giving them guidance, it lets us know what's going on out there. We get an idea of what's going on out there. And if we find that there is a debt collection company that is abusing the Fair Debt Collection Act, I know that my colleague in Buffalo, throughout the years, have had many debt collector cases that they have brought against collectors. There were a whole host of them in the Buffalo area, and we've brought cases against them for violating the law relating to debt collection practices. Contact our office so that we at least know what's going on, and maybe we can give you some guidance as to where to go forward. And that's true about any consumer-related topic. If a consumer has an issue with a business, it could be a lack of communication, it could be a problem, whatever it is, you can file a complaint with our office that we will try to provide mediation services to resolve. You can go online, look us up. You can get the complaint form online nowadays, so you can file the complaint online nowadays. And if it's from the Ithaca, Tompkins County area, it'll get shipped to our office in Binghamton because we cover this particular region, and hopefully we can provide some assistance. Thank you for coming out today. Those of you here who are here personally, those of you out in television land, we always offer the invitation. Come join us. We are at Cornell Cooperative Extension at 615 Willow Avenue in Ithaca on the second Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. when we tape this program. And what happens is that we spend the first hour, when I get jabbering, hour and 15 minutes, to present a consumer topic, but then I'm here for a little while afterwards, so if anybody has any consumer-related question, they can come in and we can throw it back and forth and see if we can get you on the right path. So again, thank you for coming. We appreciate your attendance. We appreciate you out in TV land, and we hope that we will see you next month.